I'd been riding alone for 3 days with the river keeping pace like a mean-tempered neighbor. Too close, too loud, swollen by snowmelt. The banks gave way where the water chewed, and cottonwoods leaned with roots showing. I kept to higher ground when I could, letting my mule pick his steps, telling myself there was no reason to hurry. That's the lie men tell to avoid admitting they're drifting. Near midday, I heard a rhythm that didn't belong to wind or water. Not hooves, not birds. It was a beat with intention, a splash that repeated and then stumbled. I stopped. The river turned hard around a bend of black rock ahead, and foam boiled there. Something moved in the churn, big, human, a shoulder rising and vanishing, an arm striking not in panic but in stubborn, trained strokes that were failing against the current that I've watched men drown. The river takes quick or slow, but the end looks the same. This wasn't the end yet, but it was close. The figure drifted toward a run of jagged stone. I felt that jolt you get before your mind argues. I threw the reins, kicked free of my coat, and went in boots and all, cold hit like a fist to the chest. The current shoved and spun me, then tried to keep me. I fought for breath and angle, swam ugly but hard. The water lifted me high and then threw me down, but I caught a glimpse again. Dark hair slicked to a broad skull, a face pale under river mud. Shoulders that would make most men think twice that I don't remember deciding to grab her. I remember her forearm under my hands, coiled strength and dead weight together. She turned her head and looked at me through the spray. No plea, only a measuring. The current took us sideways and slammed us toward the rocks. I found a pocket of slower water behind a boulder, shoved her into it, and we pinwheeled there. She coughed, spat river, and cursed in a language I didn't know that we drifted into a narrow arm where the bank had slumped. I got my boots into the mud, heaved until my back lit with fire, and dragged her onto gravel. We lay there heaving while the river snarled. My hands shook from the nearness of losing. She stood, taller than me by an inch, built for work, corded. Arms, long legs, the look of someone who carries her own weight and more. Buckskin clung to her and showed beadwork that caught what little sun there was. Her hair was braided with slivers of shell and a single feather matted flat. A thin line of blood marked her hairline. When she spoke, the word was soft but edged. Enough, she said, as if the river might still be listening. Then she looked at me. I am Ayana. Boon, I said, because that's the piece of myself I offer by habit. You picked a bad place for a swim. Her mouth almost smiled. She touched the cut, looked toward the bend, then passed me to the country behind us, measuring more than the water. Whatever fight she'd been in wasn't finished. I felt it settle in my bones, the sense that dragging her out was only the first step onto a road I hadn't meant to find, and that it had been waiting for me all the same. We made a poor camp 2 hours downriver where a line of willows broke the wind. I had a little coffee, a little salt, and a blanket stiff at the edges from last winter's use. She refused the blanket but took the coffee, drinking it like medicine. Eyes on the dark. I stoked the fire with driftwood and tried not to watch her. Not downriver, she said finally, chin toward the bend where the current braided white. Bad below. You came from below, I said, her mouth flattened. She touched the feather bound into her braid as if checking it was still there, then let her hand fall. I go where I must. You sleep with knife near. She tapped the place where my belt knife rode, then settled into a crouch that looked like rest if you didn't know better. We spoke in pieces. She took my name without comment, turned it in her mouth, and nodded once. Boon. When I asked her, she gave it the way a person gives a fact that isn't the whole of what they are. Ayana. The words sat between us like a stone. She told me nothing of family, nothing of tribe, but the beadwork and the language had already spoken on her behalf. I knew enough not to ask for what wasn't offered. Night lay heavy. Coyotes tuned the edges of it. She kept scanning the dark, every now and then glancing at the river as if it might stand up and walk into camp. It felt less like gratitude and more like an examination. I had the sense she was clocking my habits, where I placed my boots, how I cut a stick, the way I banked coals. It should have irked me. Instead, it made me careful in a way that felt like being weighed and found almost acceptable. When I asked if she'd been traveling with others, her eyes shifted, and she said, "I was alone last night." The way she said last told me there was a different answer for the night before that, and that I wouldn't be getting it. She wouldn't lie down. I gave up trying to be hospitable and lay on my side with my back to the fire, knife tucked under my right hand like she'd told me. Sometime near dawn, when the cold lifts and then settles again, I woke to the stillness that comes after movement. The air felt thinner. The space beside the coals was empty. Her footprints, though, were deliberate in the damp silt, a set of clean impressions angling away toward the cottonwoods. On my bedroll, set square and straight, lay a single eagle feather. I hadn't seen before, a better one than the river had soaked. It looked less like a gift than a mark. I held it and felt again that sensation from the water, that I'd been measured, and that the numbers would not be mine to choose. I've had gratitude from men I pulled out of worse fixes, backslaps, liquor, loud promises that never outlived the hangover. This was different. The camp smelled of wet willow and wood smoke and something sharp from her buckskin that reminded me of sage. Where she'd crouched, the ground was not scuffed at all. She left no sign she hadn't intended. The feather's quill had been smoothed with grease so it wouldn't crack. Whoever Ayana was, she belonged to people who did not do anything by accident. They came just after the sun threw a little warmth. 12 riders at even distance, not strung out like a posse, not bunched like boys. They moved like they'd agreed on the space between them long ago. I was packing my bedroll, the feather, tucked inside, when they stopped short of my fire, and a man with iron gray hair and a face of patient lines dismounted. "You pulled my daughter from the water," he said in careful English. Not a question. "If your daughter is named Ayana, then yes." He nodded once. "I am Nastas." He did not take my hand. He weighed me with his eyes as if the river had delivered a stranger to his shore. The others watched without twitch or whisper. Their horses breathed and stamped, and even that seemed measured. This wasn't a casual thank you. He already knew where I'd slept and what I'd burned for fuel. I felt a schoolboy notion rise. Stand straight, speak plain. He looked past me to the cut bank, then at the water, then back. "Ayana's life is tied to ours," he said. "What happened in the river was part of her duty. Acknowledgement is owed." The word carried weight. He gestured, and one rider brought a hide-wrapped bundle forward but did not open it. "I'm paid when I work," I said before I could stop myself. I wasn't working. A flicker crossed his face. Amusement, maybe respect. "Payment is not what I bring. Ayana walked upstream without you. She left a sign that says she knows what you did. She left another that says we should speak. She left a feather." I said. He glanced at my bedroll as if he could see through canvas. "Yes." He motioned to the log by my fire, and we sat like two men about to argue over a fence line. Only what lay between us was wider. The 12 did not shift in their saddles. I caught small things, the same knot on their reins, a narrow plate on every horse's tail, a dark line of paint on each man's cheek that matched no one else's, as if each line meant something personal under a larger rule. I'd worked trail crews, fought alongside men who followed orders when it suited them. This was different. What held them together wasn't fear, and it wasn't pay. "Why me?" I asked, hating the boyish sound of it. Nastas held my eyes. "Because you went into the river before you made a plan," he said. "A man like that is known by his acts. I would know the rest of you." Under the gaze of those 12, I felt my past crawl. Towns I'd left, fights I'd taken or walked away from, months when I spoke to no one. I've been alone by choice and by circumstance. Standing there, I had the sense of being placed on a scale I couldn't see, the weights clicking down one by one. The bundle stayed unopened. Whatever sat inside it was not the point yet. The point was me, and who I would be under the eyes of a people who meant to make this official. When he finally unwrapped the bundle, it wasn't coins or trade goods. A circle of hammered silver on braided rawhide, dark with age and shined by many hands. Around the edge ran 7 small markings like tracks. He held it, so the fire picked the marks out and spoke as if reciting a thing he knew by heart. 7 generations, he said, given to those who are made part of us. He let the words sit there and then added, not guest, not friend, part. The riders were quiet. I thought of all the contracts I'd made with men, some written, some spit, and a handshake. Every one of them had room at the edges for wriggle. This did not sound like that. It sounded like a gate closing behind me. What would it mean? I asked, keeping my voice level. Land for your house inside our border, he said. Protection when you need it, obligation when we call. The right to speak in council. The law that binds us will bind you. Our enemies will be yours. Our dead will be yours to mourn. He turned the medallion once. We do not make half men. If you take this, you take us. If you do not, you ride on, and we do not speak of it again. The word law tapped at something in me. I'd let go quiet. I'd spent years building a life that required no one, paid for in a quiet that eats at a man until he stops noticing. Belonging had a shine to it like the silver in his hand and a cost that made my shoulders tense. Has anyone taken it before me? I asked too. His eyes didn't move from mine. One married, raised children, died in his bed with a good name. The other took our protection, then ran when duty came close. He walks other places now. If he comes here again, he will not leave with breath. There was no drama in it. I wouldn't put that medallion around any man's neck, I said. I am not offering it to any man. He said simply that I looked at the riders. I looked at the feather in my bedroll and the river that had put me in their path. A part of me wanted to say yes on the spot, just to prove I could stand inside a circle. Another part began making lists. What I'd lose, what I'd bring, what. I didn't know. I don't say this with pride. Fear kept pace with the wanting, step for step. No half measures, Nastas said, reading something in my face. A man cannot stand with us in summer and ride away in winter to be something else. If you enter by our door, with witnesses, and the door closes behind. How long do I have to consider? Until dawn, he said. We do not drag a man into belonging. We do not leave him dangling either. There is a rite that must be done with the sun. He wrapped the silver again. The talk was finished, but the decision had only begun, and it followed me like a second shadow. As the day shortened around us, we walked the river's edge while the riders made a small noon fire that smoked more than it burned. Nastas spoke of the strangers as if he'd measured them with his own eyes. 15, maybe 20. White men and Mexicans together, horses thin, but mean, wagons with tarred canvas, rifles kept close. They burned lodge poles to cook meat they didn't clean. They cut live trees and left them half dead. They dug where they shouldn't and stank of impatience. They steal horses if they find them tied, he said. They make game scarce near the water. They pushed into a canyon with stones that are not to be touched. Ayana went to count them and learn their crossing. The river took more from her than they did. The words not to be touched sat upright in my mind. I've known men who spit on other men's rules just to watch the spit run. I've been both kinds, truth told. But the way he said it wasn't superstition, it was jurisdiction. Someone had told those men no, and they'd laughed. What happens if I take your medallion and then stand off when you ride to face them? I asked. I wanted the ugly part clear. You would be a liar, he said. Our law does not kill a man for his fear. It kills him for being a snake. If your heart turns, you speak. If you cannot ride, you carry water and stand with the women. If you cannot stand, you wash the children. There is a place for the honest weak. There is none for the false strong. That landed harder than any threat. I've met more false strong than any other kind. And your customs, I said. I won't pretend to be what I'm not. Tell me what breaks your law before I walk into it. You do not take what is not given, he said. Food, horse, woman, story. You do not speak in council until you have listened. You do not say a man's name in anger in front of his mother. You keep your fire so it does not run wild. You remember what you survived and act like it matters to others that you did. He glanced at me. And you learn what you do not know without dragging your feet and making your ignorance another man's chore. Ayana's name slid through the talk like a current under ice. She had been counting men who didn't care about any of this, and the river had tried to make her its own number. I thought about her crouched posture, the way she washed my hands, the feather I hadn't earned. Joining them wasn't just a shelter. It was a line drawn, with my boot on one side or the other. The strangers didn't care about anyone's line but their own. We ride at first light, Nastas said. If there is talking, we will talk. If not, we will count rifles and take away courage. I nodded and found my gaze pulling toward the downstream bend. Concern is a poor word. The truth is my chest tightened like a fist and wouldn't unclench until I saw that she still moved through the world. I walked alone to the place where I'd hauled her out, because some choices like to be discussed where they began. The river had settled into a long, oil-smooth reach broken only by a line of foam stuttering along a submerged rock. I skipped a stone, watched it take 3 quick steps and drown. You throw like a man who argues with himself, Ayana said from the cottonwoods. She came soundless. She looked different, dry, taller somehow, the lines of her face clean and certain. The cut at her hairline closed with a smear of pine pitch. Her English came measured, with a music under it. She didn't thank me. She looked at the water like a witness, then at me. You went in with no plan, she said. It means you have a plan that lives under your skin. The kind that is not made of words. I have made plenty of plans with words, I said. They don't always survive other people. She watched my face soften at that and gave the smallest nod, as if she'd reached a mile marker she'd been looking for. Then she said, where I am from, if someone takes breath for you when the water tries to keep it, you carry some of that person's breath afterward. You and I will owe for each other now. Is that a burden? I asked. It is not light. She said, it is not heavy. It is what it is. I will guide you in our ways if you step inside. If you do not, I will still tell you where the river lies in wait and where men lie in wait. But I have told my father you are not a leaf. You are a root that can grow. No one had called me that in a long time. I felt something steady up in me I'd thought was broken for good. We walked, steps matching without trying. She showed me a cedar that had split and healed over, a scar making a new curve where the old wound had been. You can see the wound, she said. You can also see the shape it made. We spoke of law and custom. She didn't mock. She showed where things came from. Firewood cut short so old women didn't have to bend as far. Food shared because a hidden hunger rotted a camp from the inside. Names kept off sharp tongues because women who carried children shouldn't have to carry a man's public shame. 2. It wasn't piety. It was engineering. And the men downriver? I asked. We will offer them a way to leave without losing face, she said. If they refuse, we will push them into leaving and let them keep whatever story they need. If they force a fight, we will not be the ones to waste the first breath on it. She looked at me then, not unkind. If you stay a loner, you will still end up in other people's fights. You might as well choose your people first. I realized I was already stepping toward yes. Not because of the medallion or the land, or the council voice, but because of the woman beside me who told the truth like it was a tool you could hold. If I enter, I said, teach me to carry the breath I owe without dropping it. I will, she said, and I will remind you to breathe when it gets hard. Sunset laid a copper edge on the river. The riders had made a circle of stones around the fire and left empty space across from Nastas. I stepped into that space just as the sun touched the tree lean and said the word that closed the long day of arguing with myself. Yes. It was not loud. It didn't need to be. The air tightened, then eased. Nastas rose, unwrapped the medallion, and held it long enough for the silver to take the fire's warmth. He raised it for all to see, then set the rawhide across my neck. The weight surprised me, the warmth too. I felt the circle close like a gate and felt, to my own surprise, no urge to test whether it would open again. That a woman stepped forward with smoke in a clay bowl and brushed it over my face, chest, hands. Men spoke low in their language, words I didn't understand but still felt, like the hum inside a planed board. They gave me water. I drank half and poured half on the ground. Someone explained 3 words, share with land. It landed. Easy. Belonging didn't hit like thunder. It came like a pressure you stop fighting, then realize has been holding you up. The faces around me were not friends yet. They were a structure I could lean on without apologizing for the lean. I found Ayana in the shadow beyond the firelight, her mouth not smiling but her eyes doing the work. That we went straight to talk. No hour was too sacred for work. I listened and then spoke when it made sense, and my words didn't bounce off the circle. I spoke of men who burn what they don't eat. They fear boredom. Give them a story to scratch at. Push a small drive. Of horses across above them, while 2 men build a smoky fire below to suggest a larger camp. Keep them awake. 2 rifles on the ridge at dawn. Not to start a war, but to make counting hard. It wasn't brilliance, just experience with foolish men. When I finished, the circle didn't cheer. Men glanced at each other, then at Nastas. 3 short nods passed like a quiet wind. I had contributed, not as a guest with bright ideas, but as a man now responsible for whether those ideas cost breath or saved it. The medallion cooled against my skin. The responsibility did not. When the talk paused, an old man reached for my right hand and pressed my thumb to the rim of the bowl, leaving a black crescent there. "So you remember which way to hold a cup," he said in English so cracked it sounded borrowed. Laughter moved around the circle, small, good, the kind of sound that knows itself. Ayana stepped near enough that I could smell cedar and smoke in her hair. "When it comes hard," she said under the murmurs. "Remember you said yes while the sun was watching." "I will," I said. The gate behind me might have closed, but I realized I didn't want it open. I wanted the work that waited on the other side. We bundled the fire into ash and saddled with the dull speed of people who know they'll rise again before full rest. Plans set like tent pegs. 2 men to shadow the strangers from the ridge. 3 to move horses quiet through the cottonwoods. 1 to sit in camp with the children who would wake early and demand breakfast like the dawn owed it. My place would be with the council at first light. Before we broke, Ayana came to me with a look that didn't belong to any ceremony. The others gave us space, the kind made when talk can be private in a crowd. "In our way," she said, 2 people sometimes decide to walk with 1 campfire. It happens when work proves they don't fall apart at the same places. If you are thinking this, put it in your pocket and keep your hands off it. Let it earn its shape. Do you understand me? "I understand enough to want to," I said her. Mouth did that almost smile. "Good. My father would not mind if we chose. He would not help, either. He would watch to see whether we keep the fire small enough to cook and not so big it burns the lodge." She tilted her head. "You would not tell me what to do." "I have tried telling women what to do," I said. The women and the results both walked away. "Then we will not walk that road." She pulled a leather thong from her wrist and set it in my palm. "This is not a promise. It is a tool for tying up your hair so you can see." I laughed, surprising us both. It cut the tension without discarding it that we mounted. The riders stretched into a line that could fold or spread without a word. I fell in 3 back from Nastas, the medallion flat against my chest, a cool coin. Of purpose. The country opened, brown grass, blue distance, the river coiling left and right like it couldn't believe its luck at owning so much ground. That I thought of the old life. Riding alone, safe and small. This one asked for breath and offered breath back. Ayana rode to my left where the brush thickened, gaze cutting ahead, not once checking to see if I could keep up. She already knew the answer she wanted. It was my job to live up to it, or get out of the way. To the first rise we paused. A smear of smoke showed where it shouldn't. We counted and set our jaw on the work. Behind us, women pulled water and boys argued about who carried wood. Somewhere ahead, men who thought the world was as careless as they would learn otherwise. I did not wish for a fight, but I did not dread one. That Ayana leaned with a last instruction. After this, she said, you will learn the words before you speak them. You will carry water before you speak in council again. You will listen, and I will listen with you. That is how we begin. I can start there, I said. We turned our horses toward the village that would now be mine to answer for. The river ran at our side, not enemy or friend, but witness. The road ahead held duty, danger, and the wide room of possibility. I rode into it as one of them, with my own breath and a little of hers, and enough light to see where the first steps should go.